everyone, I'm Michelle and I garden in Missouri, Zone 7A. I grow native plants, vegetables, and cut flowers, and today I'm going to take you along with me while I sow the very first native plant seeds of my 2026 season, and I'm going to winter sow them in milk jugs. Let's get going. First, I'm going to go over exactly what you'll need to do this, and I've done winter sowing for probably 4 or 5 years now, so I've come up with some tricks and tips along the way that I think make things a lot easier, so I'll make sure and include those as we go. So first, you obviously need some seeds. What I did with all of my native plant seeds this year is I made a huge spreadsheet listing all of the ones that I already have and the ones that I ordered new this year, and everything that I ordered this year I got from Prairie Moon Nursery, and I've also gotten them from the Missouri Wildflowers Nursery. Even if you're not in Missouri, you can totally order from Missouri Wildflower Nursery. They have plants that are native to all over the country. But anyway, I took all my plants, made a spreadsheet, and I put down a lot of information about them, but a very important thing that I'm going to need right now is how much cold stratification time they need. And that is something that is super easy to find, usually on the seed packet, or you can just reference the Prairie Moon website. Even if you don't get your seeds from there, they have everything organized really well, and what they will tell you for each seed is a germination code. So for example, today I'm going to be planting Silky Aster. This is one that I started last year for the first time, and it is absolutely beautiful. It blooms late into the season, so it provides a lot of color that you need for your landscape late in the season, and it provides a lot of pollen and nectar for all of our pollinators late in the season when there's not a lot left blooming. One of the best things about this aster is that it only gets to be 1 foot tall. So some asters, like New England aster, can get 5+ feet tall. This one stays very short, so it's great for a small landscape, or for me, I use it in my front yard. So anyway, on the seed packet, it will have a germination code. This one says C60. The number after the letter C means how many days of cold stratification this seed needs. So it needs to be exposed to cold winter temperatures for at least 60 days before the seed will kind of know to germinate. Like, that's what gives it the signal to go ahead and start. So I grouped all of my seeds into 3 priority groups, and this is my priority 1 group. So these are what I'm winter sowing first. I'm going to go over everything that I'm winter sowing first in another video, but this is everything that needed 60 or more days of cold stratification. I think the most I had was my blue flag iris needed 120 days of cold stratification, and I already planted that one. I still don't know if I'm gonna get enough, so today is January 3rd at the time of filming this, so it should be okay for everything that needs 60 days of cold stratification. But what you'll wanna do is look up your last frost date and make sure that you have enough days before that last date, and you'll probably wanna give yourself some extra as a buffer, because we all know that our springs are getting warmer faster, so you wanna make sure and start your seeds at least that many more days before your last frost date, however many days of stratification it needs. So anyway, you need your seed packet. You need some tape. This is my favorite kind of tape to use. The brand is called Frog Tape. It is a painter's tape, but I find that this one's a little stickier than other painter's tape brands. So I don't like to use this one if I'm trying to label something where I might later want to take the tape off, because this one leaves kind of a residue behind. But it works great for winter sowing because it holds my milk jugs all winter, but it's not quite as gross to take off as duct tape, which I've also used in the past. So you need tape, scissors to cut our milk jug in half, and I'll show you that in a little bit. You need a marker for labeling, and I highly recommend this garden marker. Let's see if I can show it to you there. This specific brand will not wear off. So a Sharpie will wear off with time when it's outside in the elements, exposed to the rain and the sun and the snow and everything. This marker will not wear off. I've had some plant labels that I've had for years, and they still look good as new when I first labeled them. So you definitely want to get some garden markers. I find it's helpful to have just a rag nearby because your hands are going to get dirty from the soil. And when you go to handle the seeds, you don't want soil being mixed in with it, especially if you end up putting some back in the packet. If you have one, you need a drill with a 1/4-inch bit on it. This, I find, just makes it a lot easier to drill holes in the bottom of the milk jug. Although if you don't have one, I also a lot of times just use scissors and just cut holes in the bottom of the milk jug. So I have my milk jugs here in a crate, which I'll talk about in a second. But if you just have scissors, you can just take them and cut on the bottom like that. I just find that if I'm doing a lot of milk jugs, which I usually do at least 100 of these, it starts to hurt my hand after a while if I try and cut all the holes that way. So a drill bit is very handy, and I'll show you how I drill the holes. If you're gonna drill holes, I recommend a crate or some kind of box that can hold your milk jugs snug in it, like this. Then you'll need your milk jugs or other containers. So I don't have one around me right now, but I will use any container that is clear or almost clear and is like somewhat closed, as long as you can put holes for drainage and at least one hole on the top for water to get in, because you do want to use your milk jugs with no cap on them so that they can get water from the rain and snow. So if you have something like, I have some takeout containers I'm going to use and they don't have any hole on the top, and I'll just use like a utility knife and cut some holes on top to make sure they can get water. And then last, you'll need soil. I have a giant bucket here of soil because I'm doing so many milk jugs. I just use regular potting soil. I have used Pro Mix and Miracle Grow are the two main ones I've used, just because those are easy for me to get. This is Pro Mix, and I buy it in a huge compressed bale that I get at my local Ace Hardware, just because I've researched what's the most cost-effective option for me to get a lot of potting soil, since I go through so much, starting both my winter sowing milk jugs and any seeds that I start indoors. And that's just the cheapest way for me to get it. So you'll have to look around near you. It's probably not best to have it shipped in at all, but I will link the Pro Mix that I use down below. The one thing you don't want to use when you're winter sowing is seed starting mix. First of all, seed starting mix is way more expensive than potting soil. And so I don't use seed starting mix for anything. Anytime I start seeds, I never use seed starting mix. I always use potting soil. The other nice thing about potting soil is that it already has fertilizers in it. So we're going to be keeping these seedlings in these containers long enough that they're going to need some nutrition. If you just use seed starting mix, it has no nutrition. It's pretty much sterile. So you want to use potting soil so that your seeds have some access to the nutrients that they need when they're just starting out. Let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I always do 4 milk jugs at a time. And like I said, I put them in a crate or something that holds them pretty snug. This will help when we are drilling holes in the bottom. So then you're just going to take your drill with a 1/4-inch bit, and I'm just going to punch probably 8 to 10 holes in the bottom of each of these. As long as they don't fall apart, you cannot put too many drainage holes. So I'm just gonna drill holes in all of these. That's a lot easier if you do it on the floor. I'm just trying to do it up here for demonstration purposes. You just drill holes in the bottom of your milk jug like that. So I'm gonna go through and do all the rest of my milk jugs here. All right, I've got all of the holes for drainage drilled in the bottom of my milk jugs. The next thing I'm gonna do is label it before I cut it at all. Make sure you label it first, because it's a lot harder to label it when this is cut in half and it gets kind of flimsy. So what I like to do is on the top of the milk jug, I just write the name of what I am winter sowing. So this is Silky Aster. That's all I write on the top. Now, at some point when it starts to get warm enough outside, I'm going to cut off this top, or at least prop it open. But just in case I cut off this top and get rid of it and recycle it before I plant this out in my landscape somewhere, I like to also label the very bottom of this, because then if I get rid of the top, I still know what this is. So I'm gonna label down here. I like to write the plant name. So this is Silky Aster. I like to write how tall it's going to get, because when I am at the point where I am planting all of these out, I will have so many plants to plant out, and it will take so long to look up how tall each of them are. So I find that height is one of the most important things for me in terms of deciding where I'm going to plant these things in my landscape. So now I know that this only gets 1 foot tall, so I will probably plant this in the front of a garden bed somewhere. I also like to write a couple notes to myself in terms of where this should go, so I can see from my plant tag here that this plant likes full to part sun. So I just put F-P for full to part, And then it likes medium dry to dry soil. So I'll just put MD, and I just know later on what those mean. So that will help me make a quick decision about where I want to plant this out, and I don't have to look up every single plant as I go. After you get your milk jug labeled, we can cut it. So we're gonna cut all the way around this except for this very little handle part, because we want to leave a handle on here so it's easy to pick up. So I'm just gonna use my scissors, stick it in there, and I'm kind of making the bottom part as big as I can so we have plenty of room for soil once we go to fill it up. So like I said, I cut all the way around except for a little handle right there. Next thing I'm gonna do is fill this up with my soil, and if I didn't already mention this, my potting soil here is pre-moistened. So I put a ton of dry soil in this bucket, and then I just put it under my sink for quite a while. You want this soil pretty damp because we are hoping to not water it until spring. If we do have a long dry spell, I will go out and water it, but I check on my milk jugs about once a week or so, and I will just lift them up and see how heavy they are. And I'm hoping that the amount of moisture I give them right here in the beginning will last for quite a while. So I am just going to put handfuls of potting soil in here, and I do about 4 big handfuls per milk jug, and then kind of flatten it down with my hand because I don't want any big air pockets in there. Now this is giving me, I would say 2 or 3 inches of depth here. Most guides for winter sowing will probably tell you to do a lot more soil than that. They'll probably say you need at least 4 inches. I think that's overkill. It's going to double the amount of potting soil that you need, and I like to make my potting soil go as far as I can. So I just put a couple inches in here. Wipe your hand off so we don't get our seeds messy. And then as far as how many seeds to plant here, because the next thing we're going to do is spread these seeds on the top. Let's see, this packet says it has 300 seeds, so I know I don't want to do all of these. I have a bad habit of planting way too many seeds in one container, and it's okay. When I go out to plant these, you don't have to separate every single little teeny seedling, and I will take you along for planting these out in the spring once we get there. But what I kind of aim for in my head is about 25 seeds per packet, if I know I'll have pretty good germination. So I grew this last year, and I know that I had decent germination with these, so I'm probably gonna aim for about 50 seeds, so about 1/6 of this pack. I used to have a really bad habit of just always planting the entire pack of seeds in everything, because who doesn't want more plants? But that leaves you with kind of a mess in the spring of plants that are way too crowded in here, and if you sow as many winter sowing milk jugs as I do, you will never have time to separate them all out. Okay, this is not opening very easy, so I'm gonna cut it open. All right, so most native plant seeds are gonna be really, really small, so I'm just gonna shake some out into my hand, and then I'm just pinching them and just spreading them around over the top of my container. Now these are really, I would say these are like medium small seeds. Some seeds, like if you grow cardinal flower or any kind of lobelia, lots of seeds, Rudbeckia, are very, very small, and you'll just want to press them into the surface. What I do sometimes, if they are even just a teeny bit bigger like this, is I'll just use my marker, or I have some little spoons, and I just kind of rough them up in the very, very top of the soil so that I just know they have good seed to soil contact, and then I'll just use the back of my hand and press them down. So again, they have good contact with the soil, because being in contact with that wet soil is what's going to tell them to germinate, and it's going to keep them moist for the whole winter, which is what's going to help them break that dormancy that they're in right now. I just realized that I have one more supply that is super helpful to have, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab that. All right, I'm back, and this is optional, but I have this pump spray bottle. This is way nicer than having a bottle that you have to press every single time you want it to spray, so I highly recommend a bottle like this. I'll try and link all of these recommended products below. I don't get anything from it or anything, just trying to help you out. And so I like to give these seeds a little spray at the end, just to make sure that everything has enough water and that they are really kind of pressed into that soil on the top. Now, when you spray these, if you spray them again at the end like I am, make sure you don't get the outside of your milk jug wet or your tape is not gonna stick and you'll have to wait and you'll be annoyed, because that has happened to me. So then, last thing we're gonna do is tape up our milk jug. So I just kind of close it most of the way. You can overlap it a little bit. And then I find that it is easiest with this tape, instead of trying to get it on there and go all the way around, just tear off a strip about 1 foot long, start on one side. It'll get you about halfway around, and just kind of press it on there. The tape works better than you think it's going to. You'll think, ugh, this is gonna open, but it's just gonna sit there all winter. You're not really gonna be messing with it that much. So it doesn't have to be like the most sealed down, secure thing ever. All right, so we have our milk jug ready to plant. When you have this, if this is your first time doing this, take note of how heavy this is. It should feel kind of heavy and like a substantial weight. So as the winter goes on, I will check these every week or so out in my garden and make sure that they are not drying out. And the way I'll know that they are not dried out is that they're still kind of heavy. If they feel really light, I will hook up my hose or bring out a watering can and give everything some water just through the top here. It's a little bit annoying because it's hard to get water in through this little small opening in this milk jug, but the main thing you want is for these to not dry out. So give them a check every week or so, especially if you haven't had any rain or snow, and make sure that everything is staying moist. And you can also usually see condensation in here. If you see condensation in here while it's outside, that is a good sign. So all I have left to do is put this outside. I just put this in one of my empty raised beds that doesn't have anything growing in it for the winter. It is in full sun, although in the winter in my yard it's fairly shaded just because of the angle of the sun, but that is totally fine. Once we get to spring, it will get more sun, and you do just want it exposed to the elements, so don't put it right against your house, otherwise it might not get the rain and the snow that you want. I've also heard that it's a bad idea to put these on concrete. I think the concrete can dry them out quicker, so I just put these either in a garden bed or in my mulched pathway area between my garden beds. So I'm gonna stick this outside, and that is all you have to do to winter sow some native plants. I will throw some footage up on the screen if I can find some of all the plants that I have winter sowed throughout the years. I have grown most of my native plant gardens from seed using this method, and as long as you are patient, because some seeds do take a couple years to really show you what they're gonna look like, to flower, and show you what they're gonna be like in their full maturity. If you can be kind of patient, this is a super inexpensive way to really grow your native plant collection and attract all the beneficial pollinators to your yard and make your yard the prettiest yard on the block with all your native plants. So I'm gonna put this outside, and that is it. That's all I've got to do. I would like it so much if you would like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks, bye.